All right, we'll call the June 8th, 2021 Planning Board meeting to order. May I ask everyone to stand with us for Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Does anyone have any disqualifications this afternoon? All right, hearing none, believe we have a quorum with 5 members. And, all right, the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Gary, that's you? All right. Agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes from the May 11th Planning Board meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
All right, we have a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. All right, first item tonight is old business. PB 20-12 Carolina Club Homeowners Association request to amend the Currituck County Unified Development Ordinance Chapter 4 use standards to allow shared parking of major recreational equipment as an accessory use in major subdivisions approved and recorded prior to January 1, 2013. Ms. Voliva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you remember at the last meeting in May, we presented the proposed text amendment and discussed Carolina Club's HOA language, and the board tabled that request at staff's recommendation in order to give time to work through some items that we believe would address plan consistency as well as our staff concerns. And the main concern at that point had to do with compatibility and allowing these potential land uses next door to properties that might be developed. And we wanted to make sure that opportunities were there for those adjacent landowners to present any evidence that they feel might need to be included in the request or in the hearing and evaluated during the hearing before a decision was made. Very similar to what you see with a major subdivision. At the last meeting, we also presented to you the specific standards, and you'll find those in your packet, pages 12 and 13, and we can go over any of those if you have any questions. They, if you remember, deal with primarily how this will look, how it will be, the process, and any screening, how things will be parked, use and activity that will be located on the property. So the change specifically for the Ag, SFM, and SFI districts will now show U instead of a Z. That is an indication of the special use permit requirement. We kept the major recreational equipment definition the same. The only other item that then leaves deals with open space, and this isn't necessarily something that requires resolution with the applicant's request, but it currently exists, and there's a conflict in our ordinance dealing with open space and its intended uses. That's Chapter 7, Section 7.1.3, and what it states is that outdoor storage areas can't be counted as open space, and more or less that's exactly what this is. Definitions of open space, it can allow for parking, but typically that's associated with the recreational use, whether it be active or passive recreation. And so we'd also ask that the board look at language as part of their motion that would also amend that Chapter 7, Section 7.1.3 to explicitly either allow or not allow shared parking in open space. It's our opinion that open space for use at automobile type uses like this and storage probably should not count as required open space. Doesn't mean it can't be in open space, it just can't be required open space. So we'd ask that the board include that in their motion, and that any set aside area for that shared parking of major recreational equipment that's placed in open space, and normally that would be associated with active or passive recreational uses, public facilities, conservation lands, and farming operations, for that to remain the same. So I have in here the pictures if you want to see those, along with the type D buffer requirements if we want to talk about any of that, if you have any questions. But the main change was changing the type of permit required or review required for this accessory use from a zoning permit to a special use permit. And as such, we are recommending approval, provided the text amendment considers the use of open space as part of that motion.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Balova on that one?
I do. On the motion, we're looking at requiring shared parking and storage of major recreational equipment. Select one, shall or shall not be counted as. So the word required, in other words, when you mean that it's part of that ratio of how much open space was in the original plat.
Right.
Okay, so when something's brought on in addition to the original plat, then it's handled differently in this case.
It can count as open space.
But it's not required.
It's not required open space.
Okay.
A lot of times you'll see subdivisions that exceed their minimum requirements, and open space is one of those things because our stormwater requirements are a little more stringent than some areas. Oftentimes you'll see stormwater features actually kicking that open space requirement up a little bit in the percentage, so they will generally have more open space. The one thing to think about when making changes to recorded subdivisions, because this could apply to a recorded subdivision as well, is if a subdivision goes to record and it has open space that is dedicated, reserved and dedicated on a recorded plat, and you want to make a change to that as an association, it requires consideration or consent of all the property owners in the development to that application. Yes, because they have, there are certain, when you buy into a subdivision and it has dedicated open space, and the applicant has firsthand knowledge of this because they've tried to go through this process. And when you record that open space dedication on the plat, property owners have rights when they buy in there. I mean, you might select a lot that backs up to open space for that very reason. There's not going to be a house behind you or a house beside you, and you desire that property. It's more valuable to you as a property owner to have that piece of property as opposed to the one that's surrounded by lots. So you've bought it with the understanding that that's what it's going to be and that's what it will remain as. So if you want to change it, there is a process. It can be changed, but it's complicated and it requires everyone. And you know how that can be, trying to get everyone to agree to something, especially if you have a lot of lots, several lots. In a development, it can almost not happen.
But in their their case here, they're adding additional property, which is above and beyond their required open space and good to go.
So this request is to be applied countywide, but the applicant owns, the HOA owns property that is not dedicated open space and recorded on a final plat. And therefore, they can act as an association and do what's allowed under their bylaws to set up or create things such as this, as long as they are consistent with their bylaws and their rules of procedure, so to speak, for the actions of an association. Doesn't mean that property owners won't come forward during the use permit process and say, I have an expert with me, and this expert is going to testify that this project in its location will have a negative impact on my property values, my ability to enjoy my property. And there, you know, with the use permit criteria, if the board finds that, number one, or deem that person an expert, number two, that their testimony has presented evidence that it will negatively impact that adjoining property owner, then they could deny that request based on its merit, based on its location. There may be things that they could do to mitigate those issues, but it allows that adjoining property owner, whether it be inside the development or outside of the development, the opportunity to present evidence in a hearing to help protect those property values, which is what we all want to do.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? Nope. You're next. Public hearing next, which it's just him anyway, but come on up.
First, I want to thank staff for all the work they've helped the association do over the past few years. So thank you a bunch. It's been a lot of work.
It has been a lot of work.
It's been a lot of work. And so I'm speaking on behalf of my board. In the beginning, we were like, we want to take the easy approach, you know, make it as easy as possible for us. And then, you know, we understand that our association, we know that things would be handled well if we were to put this parking in. But we understand that this affects the entire county. And so that whatever is done needs to be in the best interest of the entire county. And so it just makes sense that this goes through the process that she just mentioned. And so, again, you know, easy isn't always the best way. And so we, you know, we appreciate, you know, you standing behind us, you know, for our effort to possibly do this. And hopefully the board will as well. You know, we feel it's in the best interest for the entire county, and it's in the best interest of us, everybody. If staff's on board, if you guys are on board, that's just the best approach, and it's just the best way to do it. Oh, the special use permit. And so we just ask that you know, you will support us as well, because it is something that's very much needed. We need it in our association very much so.
I know Mr. Bass pointed out when you were here the first time, your subdivision has a very nice marina, but nowhere to park the boats.
Can't keep your boat in the driveway.
So I can see your dilemma there.
Yeah, and we have a lot more, and there are more boats coming there every day, and there's a lot of people with RVs, and you know, we have Zip Browns up there, but it's packed, and so and there have been people that called up our management company and asking questions before they purchase, and they're like, well, I need some place to keep my, you know, RV. And it's very important. If you can't provide it. And there have been sales that didn't go through because there wasn't a place to keep it. I mean, I'm sure somebody came through afterwards and bought it, but, you know, it's good to have, you know, it's a good community. And the more people we have that come in with their boats and RVs, it just makes it a better community. And if we can provide that, we kind of have obligation to maintain, modify, and enhance our community as a board and provide with them with whatever we can, what's needed. And so, I mean, it's a lot of work. I mean, whether it'll happen, don't know, but we're trying. So, but we appreciate your support, and I hope we'll have your support and the Board of Commissioners as well. And maybe we can get this done one day.
Well, we think a lot of their opinion and have a tendency to lean on it heavily sometimes, so.
They do all the hard work.
Do you have his name and address?
I do.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for him? Nope. I think we're good.
Okay, great.
If something comes up, we'll call you.
Okay, no decisions to be made right now?
Yeah, we're going to. Nobody has any questions for you.
Okay. Do I stay?
Yeah,
Okay.
just hang out for a second. If we have any more questions, we'll call you back up.
Sure. I got lots of answers.
All right. I'll open the public hearing. It doesn't look like there's anybody here to speak on it, so we'll open and close that. Any further discussion? All right. I think the next step is we'll open the floor for a motion. Anybody has anything?
I move to approve PB 20-12 Carolina Club HOA and recommend the request include an amendment to Chapter 7, Section 7.1.3, requiring shared parking and storage of major recreational equipment shall not be counted as required open space because the request is consistent with the 2006 Land Use Plan Vision Statement and Land Use and Development Goals number 10. And the request is in keeping with the provisions of the Unified Development Ordinance and the County Code of Ordinances. It results in a logical and orderly development pattern and establishes an evidentiary process that will evaluate the location, design, and operations of the shared parking to determine compatibility with the surrounding land uses.
All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A second? Mr. Dahl?
Mr. Dahl.
You taking that one?
Yeah.
All right. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes unanimously. So, Mr. Hood, we didn't have any more questions. I think you're good.
All right, yes, it's a long day. So, thank you. Thank you
Yes,
all
sir.
very much. And, hopefully we'll make it through this next phase soon.
Thank you.
All right, we all have a nice evening.
Yes, sir.
Thank you again.
Okay. Next one is new business, PB 21-10, Currituck County Tax Amendment. Request to amend the Currituck County Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 2, Administration, Chapter 6, Subdivision and Infrastructure Standards, and Chapter 10, Definitions and Measurement to allow family subdivisions on parent parcels 12 acres in area or larger without the required connection to an existing DOT-maintained street.
That'll be me. Thank you.
Take it away.
Thank you. So this text amendment was directed by the Board of Commissioners. Staff was directed by the Board of Commissioners to prepare this text amendment. And the provision that it specifically targeted is the family subdivision. We can go to, I'm going to skip that one. We'll just do this. Yeah, thanks. Is the regarding family subdivisions, which a family subdivision is a type of minor subdivision. And the direction from the board did come with a few specifics. One, that it would be applicable to parent parcels of 12 acres in area or greater, that there not be a limit to the number of lots that can access a private access street, and that the minimum lot size would be 3 acres. So the family subdivision lots created would be 3 acres. So with that direction, the text amendment that staff crafted really targets the provision in the family subdivision section of the ordinance that states that private access streets created shall connect to an NCDOT maintained public street and shall not serve more than 5 lots. And you can see on, I did want to mention that I did pass out that revised staff report. There was a minor change to that. And so I'm on page 5 of 8 of that staff report. And you can see the first underlined language there that, and I'll read that again. So private access streets created shall connect to a DOT maintained public street and shall not serve more than 5 lots. And then the new language is, except for lots that meet the following standards. So all of the other minor subdivision review standards that are applicable to this, as well as any of the family subdivision standards applicable, still apply. And then we've added the provision that the parent parcel or tract shall be a minimum of 12 acres in area. That parent parcel does have that 10-year reset date still because that's applicable to family subdivisions. That the lots created shall be a minimum of 3 acres in area and a minimum of width of 125 feet, and that width came from the minimum lot width requirement in ag zoning as well as SF single-family mainland zoning SFM. That existing and new streets shall be improved in accordance with section 6.2.1B1, which is the private access street standards, and those should be improved from an NCDOT maintained public street to the proposed lots, the lots created. That a certification by a North Carolina licensed engineer be provided on the plat indicating that the existing and new streets meet North Carolina State Fire Code. That's the 75,000-pound fire apparatus turnarounds that are required. That all owners, and I'll talk a little bit about some staff concerns and why some of this language is crafted in just a moment, but that all owners of existing private streets shall consent to the family subdivision application. So if you're going to connect to an existing street that you do not own, then you need consent to do that. That an agreement specifying ownership and responsibility for the maintenance of existing and new streets shall be recorded prior to approval of the plat, and that the plat shall state that lots created shall not be further divided into family subdivision lots. And so, I just want to turn your attention. The majority of this text amendment language has to do with accepting this particular section from other relevant portions of the ordinance. So, relaxing the standards basically for this particular type of family subdivision. But I do want to call your attention to, under the staff recommendation in the memo, some of the staff concerns that planning staff recommends that the board carefully consider the impacts of this amendment on all property owners, because owners of property along existing private access streets have the assurance that development that accesses that street will be limited unless the street is improved to DOT standards, upgraded, paved. The ordinance states that the purpose of subdivision regulations is to promote health, safety, convenience, order, prosperity, and welfare of present and future residents of the county, and subdivision infrastructure standards are established to maintain conditions essential to the public's health, safety, and general welfare. And road maintenance is a very important part of that. It's necessary for access, for safety, and for emergency response. And so staff is concerned with relaxing the standards for family subdivisions and the impact that may have on existing substandard roads, and creating an ordinance where roads are further deteriorated due to creation of new lots on those roads. As you can see, the text amendment does leave the potential for unlimited lots on a private access street, The family subdivision resets every 10 years. It's feasible. There could be multiple family subdivisions connecting to an existing street to continue that street into a property. And staff also feels, and that's why this language is there, that the owners of the existing private access street should consent to this application to create more lots that use that street for their access requirement. And again, in the language we have that the lots shall not be further subdivided into additional family subdivision lots. And we have requirements for those plat statements about the roads. And you know, we talked about this briefly in the work session. The requirement that a maintenance agreement is recorded provides clarity, but it doesn't provide, staff can't enforce that necessarily. So there's still maintenance, potential for maintenance issues in the future. Oops. So I think I hit on all the proposed amendment standards, as well as the staff concerns with the text amendment as it's written. And let's just take a look at the text amendment review standards. So these are the standards that the board can consider when determining whether to recommend approval or denial of the text amendment. Is it consistent with the land use plan and other county plans? Is it in conflict with the ordinance or the code of ordinances of the county? Are there change conditions that are requiring this amendment? Does it address a demonstrated community need? Is it consistent with the purpose of the zoning districts? Would it improve compatibility among uses and ensure efficient development? Result in a logical and orderly development pattern, and not result in significant adverse impacts on the natural environment. So those are the standard when you're considering the text amendment. Those are the standards. You can also be thinking about how this text amendment affects those items. I do want to also call your attention to a land use plan policy that you could potentially say supports this amendment, but it's, you know, because it's the transportation policy number 12 that new residential development shall provide for the installation of paved public roadway, again, paved public roadway and drainage infrastructure at the time of development, intended to prevent the creation of substandard developments that must later correct for infrastructure problems that could have been avoided had they been installed properly from the beginning. If you ended it there, that would not support this text amendment, clearly. But it does go on to say that family subdivisions and non-asphalt roads serving the northern beaches are the only exception to this policy. And the request does allow family subdivisions to create larger parcels with relaxed access standards for the purpose of keeping the land within the family. That is the intent, is that the land is kept within the family, and it's not to circumvent the zoning ordinance for short-term investment purposes. So, any questions?
Well, that's part of the 2006 land use plan statement, but a family subdivision in 2006 was just 5 lots, and it ended. Right?
Correct.
You couldn't wait
2013 is when the 10-year reset.
5 more.
Right. So this is another kind of incremental change to that to relax that policy even further.
So it's there, but it doesn't really have the same meaning to apply to what they're asking for today, really, I don't think. I don't think it leads to orderly development. I think it leads to a mess. My concern would be commercial traffic and the impact that would have on the other people that would live down that road. you don't have to have commercial property to create commercial traffic. The less than 1 acre sand pits, crab operations, crab shedding operations, agriculture operations that can all create heavy commercial traffic at times that would, excuse me, destroy a family subdivision, Rock Road, in one rainy day. And I don't think that's fair to the other people that would live down that road, have to pay out of their own pocket to maintain somebody else's mess. Just my opinion. But while we're discussing it. So, did I interrupt your presentation? I'm sorry.
No, you did not. That's all I have at this time.
Does anybody else have any questions for
I want to
Jenny?
understand the reset concept exactly. And can you explain that a little bit? So it resets every 10 years.
It seems that way for family
For
subdivisions.
family subdivisions, right?
And what does that mean? And I'm probably totally wrong, but let's say somebody has 100 acres.
Mhm.
And they cut out a family subdivision for 4 lots. Now, 10 years later, can they add additional lots?
Yes.
So 4
On that
more
parcel,
lots
provided there's not been any other splits.
within that
They would have, I mean,
timeframe?
it could be 5 and then 5.
Okay, but there's a 10-year period. That they
10-year
have to-
reset.
Okay, that's
Mhm.
what I thought
Yes.
it meant. I just wasn't
Right.
sure. Okay.
Prior
And then
to
for-
2013, you could only do it once. The set date, I think, was November 1st, 1989.
April, was it November or
But
April?
whatever.
April 2nd,
April
89.
2nd.
Yeah, it was 89, and
And-
up
and-
until 2013, that
It
was,
didn't reset.
it didn't reset.
You could just do
That was it.
a set number
Right.
of parcels out of your parent parcel, and when you hit, I think it was 5, that was it. You had to do a major subdivision at that point. That was
Right.
your only choice.
Okay.
5 family, and some people might struggle to have 5 people within 2 degrees of kinship to do a family subdivision for, so they may not do all 5.
Or that you
And then
may
the family
want to
grows, and then maybe they have more down the road. The other thing that I didn't mention, but it is in the ordinance, is that you can only get 1 parcel through the family subdivision process per person. So you get 1 parcel, right? So
So if I did a family subdivision, I can't wait 10 years and do another one.
correct,
I'm a citizen and I get one.
right.
If it's deeded to you. So
Me and my family.
if you create the family subdivision and it's intended for your child, you create parcel 1 for child 1, parcel 2 for child 2, and you state their name and you attest to that's the transfer order. They only get that family division. It's somewhat of an exemption, more or less, because you're not putting in infrastructure
Don't
that
want
you
you
would
to-
normally see with a subdivision of that many lots. Water, roads, those types of things. You only get it one time for their lifetime. But that doesn't mean that any properties that you retain, that you can't do it again for other family members. But right now, the limitation is 5 on that private access street. Now, that's pretty much what drives that, is 5 on that private access street. Now, could you create more if you were on a state-maintained road? Potentially, yes. I mean, you could, that reset really works in that situation, but when you're accessing off of a private access street, that's where this language would allow it.
All right. No, you're fine. It's all helpful. Does anyone else have any questions? All right. You guys are the presenters as well, so open public hearing, I guess. Sir, are you here to speak on an item tonight?
Well, I just want to speak on the water situation, of the drainage of the water.
Are you here for the family subdivisions?
No, I'm
Just water
an
drainage?
individual that has a piece of
Okay,
property.
well, we'll get to you in 1 second. I was just making sure you weren't here to speak on this specific item we're working on right now.
Right.
All right. I'll open and close the public hearing. Is there any further questions for staff or discussion? All right, then I will open the floor for a motion.
I move to recommend denial of PB 21-10 because the request is not consistent with the 2006 Land Use Plan and Land Use and Development Goal Number 10 to properly distribute development forms in accordance with the suitability of land, infrastructure available, and the compatibility of surrounding land uses. And the text amendment may not result in a logical and orderly development pattern because extension of substandard private access streets for family subdivision purposes may detrimentally impact existing property owners along the streets.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We got 3. Opposed?
Nay.
All right. The ayes have it. And motion passes.
Fair enough.
All right. That's it for items tonight, correct?
I'm good with it.
Yep. Jenny, that's it for our items tonight, right?
As far as I know, it is, yes.
All right. Well, sir, if you want to come on up, and I don't know that we can address your situation, but we'll be glad to hear what you got to say.
Okay. Well, did y'all determine anything about the water drainage and runoff?
Well, we're not the commissioners. This is the Planning and Zoning Board.
Okay,
You might be at the wrong folks, but
right,
these ladies here are with staff, and
okay. Well, I just,
what's your concern?
basically, I've lived here for 77 years.
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Richard Evans, Maylock, North Carolina.
Thank you.
Tulse Creek Road. We have a drainage problem on Tulse Creek Road. It stays flooded lots and lots of times. When I was young, it might have got flooded twice a year. But I was just wondering, I talked with the state about 5 years ago, and the biggest thing is from any road to the bridge, Tulse Creek itself. That's where the big problem is. And I think that I talked with the state man. He said, it used to be where I live at, there was about 50 yards from the Rain Road ditch, there was another ditch that the state used to keep open with the convicts. That's way back. And I talked with him to see if he could get it cleaned out and all. He said, we can't do that. That's not our ditch. Well, I don't understand that. But anyway, that's what he said. All right, I said, well, can you clean out beyond where I'm at? You know, the flood's real bad. I'm just past Tulse Bay Colony. And he said, well, there's a place down there in the swamp that the people of development had stopped up the swamp. He said, we can't get a right of way there. I said, well, how about if you go down the side of the road? If you dig a 4 to 6 foot ditch square, the water would run out even though it's higher. He said, we can't do that. So why can't they do that? You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. I know that area is being addressed the best they can right now. I think the wheels have a tendency to turn slow in government, but
Right,
I do know that area you're speaking of has been a concern of a lot of people
yes,
recently,
yes.
and I do think there are some things coming that will hopefully address that problem for that whole area.
Do you think they're
Now,
going to clean, you think they're gonna clean
it's
the
not
ditches
us
out?
here, but I've heard there are some things in watershed district, that kind of stuff that they are working
Well,
on.
the whole Tulsa Road up and down it now floods, up and down it, but that's the worst place, you know. But,
They have environmental groups they have to work around and stuff like that, but I think they have to get right of ways, work with old subdivisions, new subdivisions. There's a lot to it, but
right.
I know that probably didn't address your concern here tonight, but
Right.
I don't
Well, I
know
thought
that
that
isn't
was-
about the best we're going to be able to do for you tonight.
Okay, there's one more thing that I'd like to you
Sure.
consider. Now, most people ain't even thought about this. Like I said, I've been here for 77 years, and I've been on the Sound 65 years, off and on, mostly on. To give you an example, in Chesapeake Bay, in the summertime when it's hot, there's lots of places around it they can't even go swimming for weeks at a time because of the water pollution. Okay, and the Chesapeake Bay gets flushed twice a day. Currituck Sound maybe gets once or twice a month, maybe. And so, looking at the future, with a lot of houses here, what's going to happen to Currituck Sound? Everybody should be thinking about that, because we got one of the best fishing areas in this area or anywhere. But if the water quality goes down to nothing, which I think it will, if enough houses come in here, you're gonna have a big problem there. Yeah. But that's up to y'all. I've had my good times.
All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
So the flooding area, back to that, what do you see as the cause for this?
Well, the easy fix is
Oh, the cause. What do you see as the cause? You said
it's low there, and it used to not flood nowhere near what it does now.
so. What do you think that cause is?
The ditches, they stopped up 2/3 or better of the ditches in Tulsa Bay County on the right-hand side. Now it runs down the road.
Who's that?
The people that stay there,
Okay.
the houses all along there.
All right.
It needs to be, all the ditches need to be cleaned. If it was me, if the state didn't have a right of way, they got a right of way on the side of the road. They can dig a ditch, probably 4 foot wide and 4 foot deep, and put some bigger pipes in there, because there's a lot of water comes off of there, all the way down, way back, probably 2 miles on the other side. So if they get big pipe in there, and if they can dig those ditches out deep, even if it's along the side of the road, even if they can't get that old ditch line that used to be about 50 yards from the road, if they don't get that, people might complain about that. They can go along the side of the road and dig a ditch. They'll run that water on Georgia Creek, you know. And there ain't nobody doing nothing.
What correcting the original ditches back to the way they were originally?
Yeah, a long time ago now, that would be perfect, because the land is like this. Just like this. And it ends up in a swamp down towards the creek. Ends up just like it goes right in the swamp. Well, they cut the swamp completely off when they made a housing project 15 years ago, back in the back. They dammed it off and made dirt there and all, but they didn't put no pipe in there or nothing. Well, it comes down through there, and there's no way for it to get out.
And the ditches are on private property?
No, not the state ditch. You got a state ditch right along the edge of a road that goes all the way along the edge of Old Tulsa.
You say that's the one that's been impeded or degraded over time?
Oh, no, they had another state ditch right down 50 yards from the main highway that they used to keep out and keep clean and never had no problem. But now, all those land, houses and stuff in Tulsa Bay Colony and down Old Tulsa Creek Road, they don't want to open that center ditch up about 50 yards from the road. If they do that would be the best way and the easiest way. They could go right on to the swamp, and the swamp would drain right on into the creek.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to ask, anybody's got that much time around, they've probably got a pretty good perspective of what happened and what could resolve it.
I don't know, because I'm not involved in it directly, but I know that's been in part of what they're trying to do is acquire easements to be able to maintain stuff
They're trying to
that
get
has not
easement
been
now.
maintained.
You know, it looks like the state could do most anything they need to, like you said, get an easement and do what they got to do, and it'd be all right.
I believe the county's taking some of this on their own that they don't necessarily have to, but
I
trying to
got you.
fix it, but DOT's not gonna fix anything.
I believe, and you know what?
That's just how
They're
it is.
getting money from the government right now. DOT is for, you know, building roads and stuff like that. Every state's getting it, so they can't say they ain't gonna get the money. No, they'll get the money if they ain't already got it. But just doing it, getting somebody down there that can do it and do the job, that's all they got to do.
Yes, sir. Well, we'll pass the message, and
All right.
I don't know what your next step may be.
Right, well, I haven't ever pushed it. I come down here because, I wanted to see what was going on, you know.
Sure.
That was the
The
main.
commissioners, you may want to voice your opinion to them as well, but I do believe they are already working on it.
Don't they have a meeting every Monday night of every month?
It was last night, and then they'll have one on the 3rd.
It's the first and third Monday of every month.
The first and third.
Do you have a letter, a notification of a meeting?
Well, this is just, what they, give me in the mail, that's why I come back here.
That's probably being part of the drainage district or whatever.
This was actually part of the discussions from, I believe, yesterday.
Okay.
It was June 7th.
Okay.
You may want to contact the manager's office tomorrow.
Okay.
This is the planning board. They won't actually hear this. This is actually the board of commissioners. But you give them contact information is right here. It's at that number. Okay. All right.
Good y'all.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
And, maybe something will get going here.
Well, that's all right. Keep plugging that.
Yeah. Like I said, I've been here a long time, seen a lot of different things. Yeah. See y'all later.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Donna. I think that's it. So, open the floor for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.